Hello, my name is Mark Taylor. Welcome to the Education on Fire podcast network. This show is sponsored by the National Association for Primary Education. There comes a time in every person's life when you realise it's not about doing what you are told, but doing what you know is right for you. Let us take a journey of learning and discovery with the world's most successful people who are living the life of their dreams, walking through life using their inner wisdom and being of service to others. Forget exams, grades and test scores. What is your purpose? As we let go of what we think should be and learn from our elders to gain knowledge, inspiration and a true sense of who we are. What are your dreams? Does your life have meaning? Are you living a life of significance? Let's talk with today's guest. Hello, my name is Mark Taylor and welcome as we spend some more time together on the Learning on Fire podcast. Today I'm talking to Alissa Daire Nelson. Hi Alissa, thanks for joining me and let's explore the journey of who you are.
Oh, thank you for having me on, Mark. I'm really excited to be here. Boy, the journey of who I am. I am a business success coach right in the heartland of the U.S. in Minnesota. If you can't tell from my accent, but very Minnesotan accent. I work with, small businesses and also individuals on really sort of leaning into identifying and leveraging their innate strengths and really the uniqueness of who they are. It's super fulfilling, and I love what I do, and it's totally different than my educational background, which is why I'm super excited about talking about the education and how it plays into the rest of our lives, right? So it'll be an interesting conversation today.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic, and we should just come clean and say that we actually have met before at Podcast Movement in Anaheim a couple of years ago, and it's always great to be able to get people on that you've met before and you have some kind of idea of what they do in their background and that kind of thing. So yeah, this should be a lot of fun.
Yes, it should be. It will be.
It will be, absolutely. I really like the fact that you sort of straight off the bat were talking about who you are and that sort of individuality, because the one thing we know within the education system is it's a little bit one size fits all. It's that you have to study these sorts of subjects, give or take a couple, but you have to go to school at this time, you have to do it in a certain way, and it's really hard for that sort of personality and the individuality to come through, isn't it? So I mean, what's your experience of that, especially with the sort of coaching that you're doing as well?
Yeah, I think teachers are really the key here. I have an immense level of respect for teachers who come into a classroom of 30 children and see them as children, as individuals, and yet they have to get them to one goal by the end of the semester or by the end of the term. And so, teachers have a lot of really great strengths in, what kind of learning style these kids have and such. And I don't hate the education system. I love being unique and I love helping people to find their uniqueness. And, my superpowers are not your superpowers, but there's a level set of education that we all need. We all need to know how to do, a certain level of math and reading comprehension and all of those kinds of things. And so, and it helps us to dive into what do I even like? And some kids don't really want to explore that. And so sort of being forced in some way to engage in some of these classes that they wouldn't necessarily sign up for. And all of a sudden you find a young girl who goes, oh my gosh, I really love science, right? So I think that there's an importance to having a very broad array of classes that you're, again, for lack of a better term, forced to take so that you can discover what you do and don't like, where your strengths are. And sometimes where your strengths aren't where you thought they would be, and where you naturally excel isn't even where you thought it would be. So, it is the job of the teacher to, play to those children's strengths inside of the classroom. And I do think that things like ADHD, are overdiagnosed, and that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother podcast. But I think teachers do a really nice job of letting kids be who they are while still keeping their eyes focused on the end product, which is they have to know this curriculum in order to pass to the next grade or to the next level.
Yeah, and I think that's it. You really do sort of, you're in a system whether you like it or not, in whichever form that happens to come. And I think there's almost like a two-tier side to it. One of them is the fact that, like I say, it's the individuality. It's actually trying to find that broad curriculum so you can actually experience all those things. Like I say, and it might be that it just proves what you don't like is true and it's not what you want to do, or it might just open the door to something you were never aware of before. But actually, that, like you said, we still need to learn how to read and write and all the math stuff and as well. And if you can think of some of those things as tools sometimes, I mean, I never was that bothered about how my English was and how I was writing until I was suddenly a little bit older and realized that actually, if I need to communicate with somebody on a professional level, or I need to get my point across in a way that really was going to be taken seriously, then those tools, that skills that I had were really, really important. And even if you understand it on that level, I think it gives you a sense of purpose with it, even if it's not your favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up skills and tools because, from my perspective, there's a vast difference between strengths and skills. So, like, when we learn how to use, how to do math, right? How to do division and multiplication and those kinds of things. That's a skill, right? That we can use. And you hear my kids too say, well, "I have a calculator. What do I need to know how to do this for?" But then we bring it around to all the reasons, all the applicable reasons they need to know how to multiply and divide, and they go, "Oh, I guess that's right." But you think about different skills like building a house, right? So if you're taught the right skills, you can do the things. A strength is when it brings you energy to do those things, and where your aptitude for those things maybe is higher than it would be in other areas. But strengths are really where it generates energy for you, and it generates energy for others around you when you engage in that type of thing. So I say that skills are the what you do and your strengths are how you do it. And I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah. I think that's really important, and one of the things that always strikes me, I've talked before on the podcast about having the opportunity to learn music because I'm now a professional musician. I would have never have found that if we didn't have to do that when we, at the age of 11, our music lessons were being in a band essentially, and you had to learn something. But it was only a few months before, as I finished our primary school over here, I was like, I'm not interested in singing anymore. I'm not playing recorders. I'm not doing music. I'm going to do football. And actually, at that point, I would have just stopped. And it was only because it was something that we had to do. And then, within a few months of them being at the larger secondary school, I was hooked and had lots of opportunities, which was something I'd never had before. So, so key, that broad curriculum idea.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
What does your life look like now, and how is it different from when you were growing up?
Oh boy. Well, my life looks like, I couldn't be more happy with my life. I have an amazing husband who I brag about constantly because I truly believe he's the best man who ever walked the earth. And of course I'm biased, I guess, but, and he and I have been married for 6-ish years. And I have 2 beautiful daughters who are 11 and 13. So this is a second and last marriage in case. So we're like, a second marriage. So is there a third one coming? No, this is a second and last marriage.
Yes, my current wife, as some people say.
That's right. Exactly. Or sometimes I'll say, well, when I was going through my first divorce, I'm like, I mean, my only divorce. Words are hard and words are important. So my 2 daughters, 11 and 13, are simply amazing young women who make me proud every single day. And so, those are the 3 people that are the most important things and people in my world, and everything I do for them. Business is thriving. I mentioned to you before we hit record, I just joined forces with another local business coach. And so I no longer have to work alone anymore. I'm an extrovert to the nth. And so, working at home alone, even though I was interacting with my clients every single day, was really tough. And I'd been looking for the perfect business partner for several years, and I finally found him. So I'm super excited about that. And that's what my life looks like pretty much. It's my family and work, and a little bit of play and friends and things like that, but definitely vastly different than growing up. And certainly, even as we went into my university or college education, the 2 degrees that I got there are not related directly to what I do now. I grew up in a family of 7 children. And, it was one of those things where you had to move fast or you weren't going to get enough dinner. And if we wanted anything, it was up to us to go get it. And so it grew in me an incredible work ethic and drive, which I am so grateful for. And that's how I grew up. I'm number 6 of those 7. So.
And we talked a little bit about what we think, is important in school and that sort of curriculum and exposure and that kind of thing. But what specifically do you think was valuable about your own school experience?
For me, it was, I was one of those teenagers, especially, I got more mouthy, and challenging to authority as I became a teenager, where I wanted to do things how I wanted to do things. And I didn't understand why, rules were in place, et cetera. I wasn't someone who said, oh, that's the rule. Great. I'm going to go do the rule. I'd be like, well, why? And if the authority figure couldn't give me a really good reason, of course, to my really good reason for me why that rule is in place, I'd blow it off and I'd go do my own thing. And I was an excellent student, but I was also very often in trouble for talking too much or talking back or, giving a little bit too much of my own opinion. And so that was super interesting just kind of growing up, and I couldn't get out of high school fast enough. And then I went off to college, and I loved the setup of college because I had so much more autonomy and so much more choice. Yet I ended up changing majors very early on. I was in broadcast journalism first, and then I had an incredible experience with the college dietitian. I was a gymnast, and my coach thought I weighed too much. So he sent me off to the school dietitian, and she was the first person who helped me to start having a positive relationship with food versus, food is evil and I have to restrict. And so it changed me like that. And I went on to become a registered dietitian as my first degree. And so that was pinnacle for me to be able to make that decision and go passionately into the sciences, where initially I thought I wanted to avoid them. So that was kind of my school experience, at least initially. And then when I went back for my second degree, it's different going back as an adult. You're so much more focused, and focused is really the ultimate thing. It wasn't a challenge to do the reading because I wanted it so badly.
And I think that whole aspect of things not working out the way you think, or changing your focus or your major or whatever it happens to be, it's very easy, I think, when you're younger especially. You're going through and you think, oh yes, it's got to look like this, I have to make this happen at this time in order for me to be successful or to succeed in what I'm doing. And we hear on the podcast week after week so many people saying that just wasn't the case. And I kind of hope that we're starting to hear enough of that now for people to start to believe that even though when you're younger, your experience may well be that it's what you believe, it's what you hear, it's what you're surrounded by, but the reality actually is often very different. And I think that's quite a positive thing to start to take on board.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a couple of philosophies that I live by. Number one is that life happens for you, not to you. And so, despite that it was very hurtful to me when my coach, and by the way, I was 15% body fat when my coach sent me to the dietitian because I wasn't, I was too big, quote. But it was very hurtful, and I was doing everything in my power to lose weight. And had he not done that, I wouldn't have had that interaction with that dietitian, who then changed the trajectory of certainly the next decade of my life. One of the things I think is super interesting is that here we send our 18-year-olds, 17, 18, 19-year-olds off to university. And we say, okay, go pick a major because this is going to be what your career is. And that's a really scary decision to make when you're 18 years old. You barely know. I mean, you barely know anything. And you might think you know everything, but you barely know anything. And here you're supposed to make a decision about, your long-term career. So the way I phrase it to my daughters is, what do you think you want your first career to be? So that it's not nearly as final, and it doesn't have to be, forever sort of decision. It doesn't have to feel that way. And I've found that to be really successful. And they're much more open to going, you know what? I think I'd like to try X, or I think I'd like to try Y. It's like, great. And if you decide you want to do something different, you can either go back and get another degree if that's appropriate, or you can, go create another career. And so I think that flexibility is important to give our kids too, that it's not a forever thing here.
And I think in this kind of, the era coming of portfolio careers and all manner of things, I mean, my life is split just so randomly in terms of, I'm a professional musician. I get to teach kids and coach percussion and drums. And then out of nowhere, I'm also now a podcaster. I now spend like a third of my time actually doing this thing, which wasn't even invented a few years ago.
Right.
And to sort of see that in action is really interesting. But it really does sort of make you think sometimes, don't worry so much about what you think you're actually going to do, and just do the stuff you feel is going to be good. If you like taking pictures, take pictures and do it in your way. Don't think about having to necessarily become a wedding photographer, because that's the only way you can make a living, because you don't know who you'll meet, how it's going to be, whatever the scenario is. And just especially when they're younger, like you said, our youngest is 11, and it's just that kind of just go with the flow, just see what happens, and allow it, and sort of take the heat out of that sort of surrounding, which I know is quite hot housed along in sort of through the system at the moment.
Yeah. And I truly believe that no education is ever wasted. My second degree is in nursing. I spent well over a decade in healthcare, and now I'm a business coach. Right. So you think, what on earth? Like, that's two totally different things. And the education that I had to get in order to get to this place, and certifications and yada, yada, that's for another time. But, I use those 2 degrees every single day, even if I'm not actively using them, right? It makes who I am and what I have to offer that much more rich. And this is what I help people figure out when it's, what is your unique selling proposition? How are you unique in your industry? And one of those things is that I do have a vast experience with healthcare, which is important in coaching because of the mental health side, because of, stress and stress management, and the health conditions that come along with those things. And I can speak intelligently to my clients around it, as well as know when to recommend them to their doctors or their physicians, right? And say, this is something I think that it's important to go check out, because I'm still always doing nursing assessments, right? And it's just that value add that I bring to my clients that someone without the background that I have can't. So it's important, I think, to just really relish in your entire background, even if it doesn't seem like it's, quote, applicable to what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I love the word rich. I thought that was fantastic, because it just means that, like I say, everything that you are brings a richness to what you have to offer, and that uniqueness of you, whatever that is, no matter who you are. If you think of it in that broad term, it's almost like a very friendly arm going round you, isn't it? That kind of, I've really got this, you can only bring to this meeting, this conversation, this friendship, whatever it happens to be, yourself, then, and that's a real gift. And I think, I just love that word rich. It seems to sort of encompass all of that in a way that I've not really thought of before, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Are you a teacher looking for support to create and develop music in your school? We have created Primary Music on Fire, taking the fear out of teaching by giving you the step-by-step skills and ongoing support you need. If you're a homeschooling parent and would like the opportunity to learn an instrument with your child on our 5-day challenges, all of this is available through Primary Music on Fire. Go to educationonfire.com/primary-music and sign up to the newsletter. That's educationonfire.com/primary-music. Which teachers do you remember, and why?
I remember my language teachers. When I was in high school, I chose to do both French and Spanish, which meant that I had to start at 0 hour, they called it. So before the first hour of the day. So I started school in high school at 6:30 in the morning, so that I could fit in both French and Spanish languages. And, those were the classes that I enjoyed the most. They were the most fun. They're the most interesting to me. And yeah, those teachers were I remember being sat down by my French teacher when my parents had to, got brought in because I don't remember what I had said that was belligerent or I don't know what. But, she was willing to call me out on the carpet for my behavior. And that was my French teacher. And my Spanish teacher was, like a big warm hug every time I went in to the classroom. And it was just, they were very different personalities, but I respected those teachers so, so much because of how they showed up in the classroom as people.
Yeah, and I think that's it. That is definitely a theme that I'm beginning to really understand. Is it's the personality and the connection that you have, often much more important than the subject matter. The number of people who said to me, "I didn't take their class, but this person did X or this person did Y," and you just think, yes, it's when you realize it's all about connections. It's all about that kind of interaction in whichever way that comes. That's you know instantaneously that there's something here which is for you, and it, like you say, that's the thing about maybe the tools as opposed to the experiences and all of those kind of things. Yeah, I really love that.
Yeah.
Who did you admire when you were young, and what was it about that person that had such an impact on you?
This is a difficult question because I had a really difficult time with authority of any kind when I was young. And so the people that I looked up to by nature of my attitude couldn't be in a place of power over me because I just naturally resisted that. But as I look back on that, it really is my gymnastics coaches more than anybody. They were like second parents to me. I spent more time in the gym than just about anybody anywhere else. And they were tough on me, but they also loved on me. And I loved how they treated people and how they pushed me. And so they were able to gain my teenage respect.
Yeah, which is a big thing, and I think when it's part of something that you love, isn't it? Then it has to be that if you want to get involved, then you have to take it, and in whichever way it comes. And I think, like you said, if it gets your respect, especially if it's something which you're very reluctant to give out, then I can imagine that being very powerful indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, boy. Yeah, I was a challenging teenager. Let me just say, I have better relationships with people now. But it's one of those experiences that also has made me a much stronger mother, right? And so I have to be grateful for even the awful teen experience because I get to bring my girls up in a little bit different of a way and be kind of give them a grin and go, hey, I get you. I know you're resisting authority because you want to know why this is in place and does it really apply to you? So it's been a cool addition to the relationship that I've been able to build with my daughters.
Yeah, and nature nurture. You don't know which part of that is just inbred as well.
Well, my older daughter definitely got the nature. My younger daughter, maybe a little bit of the nurture.
Yeah, fantastic. What was the best piece of advice you've ever been given, and who gave it to you?
Oh, gosh, there's been so much. I really dove into the personal development space as I was going through my divorce back, a decade ago now. And so there was a couple of things that really were helpful to me, and one was given to me by my therapist who I saw going through my divorce, and that was I was all worried about my kids and are they going to be okay, et cetera, et cetera. And as a woman, that external concern, how's everybody else doing? And she looked at me and said, look, your kids don't need therapy, they need a healthy mom. So you focus on you. And it was the first time I really took self-care to heart, to be the example of that. And then very shortly thereafter, I read this great parenting book called Scream Free Parenting by Hal Runkle. And in the book, he said, we are not responsible for our children, we're responsible to them. And so again, just doubled down on what is the example that I am to my children? Am I being the example that they deserve? And so that was really sort of the start of the road to being my best me was that. And it came out of wanting to be my best me for my kids. And it was very shortly after that then that I found the StrengthsFinder profile, which I now become an expert. And I'm putting air quotes around that because I think, you can always be more, right? You can always dive deeper. But the StrengthsFinder profile is a psychometric tool that is reliable and statistically relevant and repeatable and all of those things that the science side of my brain, right, from all of my healthcare background, needed to justify or to believe that the results were true. And it was the first time that something had said, there's all these things that are right with you. Because I was always focused on, why don't I fit in? Why can't I get along with authority? Why can't I get along with my brothers and sisters? What's going on here? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And, so those three things in short sequence started me really going, wow, there's all these really great things about me. Why don't I build on those? And so you can understand why, I'm down this very different road now, because that was so transformative to really, really letting the inside superhero of me out into the world, where I now really truly love who I am. And I sure couldn't say that a decade ago. And, and I'm not everything. So that doesn't come from a place of arrogance, just this confidence of I know what I can bring. And I also know what I'm not. And I'm not a lot of things, but that's why I'm surrounded by amazing people. So I think that was, those three things in sequence were probably the biggest pinnacle points for me.
And just on a sort of slight sidebar there, what do you feel about the whole experience idea of that? Because one of the things I'm very aware when, especially on this particular podcast, is the fact that it's very easy to say, but if you know this now, then you don't need to experience it and you can learn from other people's mistakes or their experiences, which is absolutely true. But by the same token, you learn from your own experiences, and you're on a journey yourself in terms of what you need to get out of life and the sorts of the lessons that you need to learn. So what's your thought on that sort of it's almost like a dichotomy, I guess, in terms of you have to go through things, but at the same time, you don't need to make the mistakes that everyone else is making as well if you get the opportunity to hear about those too.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two parts. There's certain people, there's certain wiring that makes it. My husband is one of these, where he was the youngest of three boys, and he watched his brothers make mistakes, and he went, "I'm not going to do that." And he rarely got in trouble, and he's made extremely good choices with his life, right? And then there's me, the number 6 of 7 kids, and I watched all my siblings do, their mistakes and whatever, and I'm like, yeah, but they're not me, so I'm going to try it. And and I needed to fail on my own, in my own right, to some degree, until I got a little bit more mature and started to go, I bet I could learn from other people's mistakes, right? So there's sort of this innate wisdom that my husband had when he was young that I just didn't seem to have. And so, now my goal is to not necessarily bypass those hard things for other people, like learn from me and you never have to make this mistake, but rather shortcut their learning. Right. So maybe they don't have to make that mistake or these series of mistakes. And, if you can learn how you're wired and how to leverage that, yeah, you can save yourself a lot of pain and agony, because you don't have to do trial and error. You can get to the root of it and go, I need my personal owner's manual. And that's what I get to give my clients right out of the gate is, this is how you're wired, and it's okay. It doesn't mean you're stuck there, right? There's a difference between a fixed mindset where, well, these are the strengths I have and this is all I have, so this is it. And then you've got the growth mindset, which is like, all right, this is my base and this is what I can grow on. And so if I can help people shortcut their learning versus bypass it, because I think our own mistakes are our best teachers, that's really my goal. So you're right. It is both. It's a yes and.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's really clear. I think that just hearing it in that succinctly, I think is, really, really cleverly put. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh boy, so much. And actually, I'm in this journey right now where my oldest daughter is 13, and I see so much of my younger self reflected. And, I'm seeing her grow in ways that I didn't grow until I was into my mid to late 20s, which is really rewarding, because it tells me that my hard work on my own personal growth is starting to pay off. But the biggest thing is that your behavior is not your identity. because I took it in as my identity. And so therefore I was bad. I was too outspoken. I was rebellious. I was all of these things that I took in as negative identities, which prevented me from growing and from really playing full out, as it were. And so I've taken a lot of care to tell my daughters, your behavior, if it doesn't make you feel good, it's because it doesn't align with who you are. And so let's figure out who you are at your core. And I, do a lot of affirmations with them and that kind of thing, which is not blowing smoke up their tails. It really is, learning the characteristics that light them up, right? And reminding them of those things. And so I think that is number one, that your behavior is not your identity, that you get to create that. And then second and most importantly, that your journey for growth is never going to end. So just go have fun and recognize that life is happening for you and not to you. My oldest daughter is going through some really challenging things right now. She fell at gymnastics and took her own knee to her face and broke 4 bones in her face, major concussion, and she's been out for 5 months. And so, she's had a hard time recovering from that and deciding, is injured what I am? Am I a quote loser and I can't get back in it? Or am I just healing? And it's been really hard for her to sort of peel away from that identity of gymnast and look at who else she is. So that's been a really interesting journey as well. So, that's the glory, I guess, of having children, is that you kind of get to do that exact thing. Go back and tell your younger self things you wish you would have heard.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the gift of being a parent, isn't it? Especially if you can see it in that round in that sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
What does your future look like?
Well, the future is always so bright, right? Like, it's just so full of possibility. It looks like more of what I'm doing now. Certainly working with businesses, and we're, Stephen and I, my business partner and I, are really bringing it home here to Minnesota and focusing on working on getting more and more businesses on the Inc. 5000 list, which is a list here in the U.S. Of the 5,000 fastest growing companies, and that lights me up. And so, as I look forward, I think about what could the economy of Minnesota look like based on the work that we can bring here to these companies. So from a business standpoint, that's what lights me up and fires me up. On a personal side, I certainly think about family vacations and watching my girls graduate from high school and then from college, and all the while having these rich relationships, but I don't have dreams of being a Hollywood star or, Tony Robbins or that. I think that my platform can build, we can all be Tony Robbins in our own right, to the people that we connect with. But that's not overtly a goal of mine. I absolutely want to impact the maximum number of lives that I can while I'm here. And so I work very diligently every single day to expand that number. But really, at the end of the day, it's, have I made an impact on my family? Have I made an impact on the people that I care about most?
And I think if you think your future just looks like more of what you have, if it expands into everything that you've got already, then you're in a pretty great place, because that is just almost the ultimate thing, isn't it? And like I say, that's the thing you can control, because you can keep those relationships growing. You can make it as rich as you want. And I think that's a really great attitude to have.
Yeah, as the saying goes, what you appreciate appreciates. And every day I look around me and I just go, my gosh, I love my life. I love my life for for the blessings that I have, and I do find that that it just keeps getting better and better and more abundant. So yeah, I can't say I can complain.
What podcast, book, video, film, song, or any resource has had the biggest impact on your life, and why?
This is a challenge because there's so many good answers for this. I have probably a dozen favorite books, but my favorite of all favorites is The Alchemist, and it's because of the journey. It took me a long time to embrace the journey of success and the journey of life. And the alchemist, to other people, it means other things. And they talk about, creating abundance and manifestation and all of that. But to me, it was about the boy's journey. And he got things when he was ready for them. And, for instance, he was in the crystal shop for a year, and it seemed like this dead space of time. And yet it was an important part of his journey. And so even those lulls of the journey are really important. And so, instead of wishing them away, just embrace them. And if you do want to move towards something else, that's okay too, because that's a part of the journey. So The Alchemist is a big one. Certainly when it comes to podcasting, John Lee Dumas is one of my biggest heroes. I went out to LA when I thought, I think I'm going to start a podcast. And I got to do a day-long workshop with John. And it was amazing to be able to learn from the best of the best. And John and I have remained friends ever since. And he's really been an inspiration, not only business-wise, but certainly in the podcasting realm, about pushing to highest quality, and never settling.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have links to all of these things in the show notes. So you can go to educationonfire.com and /Alissa, and it will pop up, and we'll have links to all those things so you can find those things as easily as you possibly can do. I really appreciate your time and everything that you've done. So if people want to find out more about you and explore a little bit deeper, where's the best place for them to do that?
The best place is probably my website. So it's daire2succeed.com, and Daire is spelled like my middle name, which is DAIRE, the number 2, succeed.com. And if you want to email me directly, I welcome your emails. I love getting emails from people saying, I heard you on a podcast. So it's Alissa at daire2succeed.com, ALISSA at daire2succeed.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Alissa, for sharing your wisdom and allowing us to learn from your experiences.
And thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Thanks for listening to the Learning on Fire podcast. For more information, please visit educationonfire.com and follow the links from the homepage. This show is sponsored by the National Association for Primary Education. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.